You know, they always say the kitchen is the heart of the home. And it's so true, right? It's where we get nourished, where we talk, where we connect. But maybe most of all, it's a space that really represents our independence. So what happens when that space, the very heart of your home, starts to feel like a barrier? When it goes from being a place of comfort to a source of stress and anxiety? Well, it can really start to limit your freedom, right in your own four walls. So how do we get that space back?
I think this quote really says it all. This isn't just about getting new cabinets or fancy countertops. It's a huge investment in something much more important: safety, independence, and just plain comfort. It's about getting confidence back and making everyday life better in ways that you just can't put a price tag on.
Okay, but let's be real. The first question everybody has is always about the bottom line. How much is this actually going to cost? It can feel pretty overwhelming, so let's just dive right into the numbers.
So based on national averages, you're probably looking at a range somewhere between $15,000 and $50,000 for a full accessible kitchen remodel. I know, that is a huge range, but there's a good reason for that. The final price tag really depends entirely on what your specific needs are and just how big of a project you're taking on.
To make that big number a little more useful, let's break it down into 3 tiers. So at the basic level, you're thinking about high-impact upgrades to the space you already have, things like pull-down shelves or better lighting. The mid-range is what most people do. This is a more serious renovation. We're talking new countertops or roll-under sink and accessible appliances. And then you've got the high end. This is a full-on gut renovation, often with custom automated features and maybe even moving some walls around.
To really get a handle on the cost, you gotta know where your money is actually going. Breaking down the budget like this is the key. It helps you figure out where you need to invest and maybe where you can save a few bucks.
So when you look at how a typical budget breaks down, one thing just jumps right out at you: cabinetry. It's the single biggest expense, eating up about 30% of the total cost. Now add labor and appliances to that, and wow, those 3 categories alone make up nearly 70% of the entire project. That means the choices you make right there will have the biggest impact on that final number.
Let's zoom in on that cabinetry slice for a second. The costs here can really vary like crazy. Simple swaps like changing out knobs for easy-to-grab D-shaped pulls are super affordable, but that specialized hardware, like those amazing pull-down shelving units that bring everything down to you, well, those can run you several $100s for each cabinet. And yeah, just removing a cabinet to create knee space sounds easy, but the real cost is in the labor to make sure the area around it is all finished properly.
Here's another really key factor to think about: what I like to call the accessibility premium. Appliances that are designed to be accessible, like a side-opening oven or a dishwasher that's a drawer, are just fantastic. They're game changers. But they also tend to cost about 10 to 25% more than your standard models. Okay, we've talked a whole lot about cost. Let's shift gears now and talk about the design concepts that make it all work. Because a truly great accessible kitchen isn't just about buying a bunch of special products. It's about a whole design philosophy. You know, it's really important to understand the difference between 2 key ideas here. First, there's accessible design. That's focused on solving a problem for a specific disability, like a lower counter for a wheelchair user. But then there's universal design, and this is about making spaces that are usable by everyone. Think about a lever door handle. Sure, it helps someone with arthritis, but it also helps a parent who's carrying a bunch of groceries. A kitchen with universal design is just better for everybody, and it really adds long-term value. The gold standard for all these measurements comes from the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. Now, while these rules are mandatory for public places, they serve as the absolute best blueprint for a home project. Some key things to remember are a 60-inch turning radius for wheelchairs and making sure you have at least 27 inches of knee clearance under sinks and workspaces. Following these guidelines is really fundamental to making a kitchen that actually works. But what if a full-blown ADA-compliant remodel just feels totally out of reach right now? Hey, don't get discouraged. You can still make huge, meaningful improvements on a budget. The key is to prioritize. Start with the most critical stuff, like a safe roll-under sink and a good prep area. You could also phase the project. Do the countertops this year, and maybe the flooring next year. And choosing smart, cost-effective materials, like luxury vinyl tile, can save you a ton without sacrificing safety. So, the big question: how do people pay for all this? The cost can definitely be a big hurdle, but you should know there are resources out there specifically to help make this kind of investment possible. It is absolutely worth your time to do the research.
For veterans, the VA has grants like the SAH and HISA programs. A lot of states also have waiver programs that can help cover these modification costs. And don't forget about nonprofits like Rebuilding Together. They could be a fantastic resource. Now, here's a really important one. If the modifications are considered medically necessary, they might be tax deductible. But, and this is a big but, you should always talk to a qualified tax professional to figure out your specific situation.
So, after all the talk about numbers and guidelines, let's just step back and reframe this whole conversation. Let's look past the initial price tag and focus on what the true return on this investment really is.
The real return on this project, it has nothing to do with your home's resale value. It's measured in the day-to-day reality of more safety, longer independence, and just a better quality of life. A kitchen that's safe and easy to use lets a person stay in the home they love for longer, maintain their dignity, and keep being part of the beautiful, simple rhythm of family life. Now that is an investment that is truly priceless.
So let's end with this question. Just for a second, forget about the costs and all the details. Just think about the possibilities. What would a kitchen that's built just for you or for someone you love, what would that truly unlock?